My name's Brenda Dunn, but most of my art stuff happens under Art Ingest, and I'm a engaged artist in Ottawa. These days, I am mostly a live streamer, and I received the ARTicipate grant in 2019. So my ARTicipate grant was to fund something called the Living Coloring Book Project. So I asked Ottawa through social media what buildings they felt represented their city, what buildings they really connected with, what places said Ottawa to them. And then I took those suggestions and kind of put them all together, and I made a giant, like 140 square foot coloring page. So I did these massive line drawings of all of those buildings, and I strung them together in a big long line, and I installed it in the Lan Doyle Gallery. Shout out to Lan Doyle and Mike, who made that entire project possible. And then during Fête Frisson, but a little bit before and after, I invited the public to come and color it in. So the idea was that the living coloring book sort of only half existed until the general public came and colored it all in with me. And I was really, really lucky that people super showed up and they completely brought it to life. The living coloring book flat out could not have existed in any other space. Partly for logistic reasons, also just the laws of physics. The drawing that I made was so big that the Lan Doyle is the only space at the time that I had any access to that could physically house it. But it wasn't just that, it was also the fact that as a community engaged artist, I'm often asking for something that's a little bit different than what a lot of traditional galleries are asking for. Very understandably, many traditional gallery spaces have really clear boundaries between the people viewing the art and the artwork themselves. And I wanted people to be able to go up to the wall and color, 2 handfuls of crayons. And I wanted you to be able to do that if you were 5 years old. And I wanted you to be able to do it if you were using a mobility aid. And I wanted you to be able to do it if you were a senior or 6 feet tall. So I had really unique requirements for the space. And I give a lot of credit to the playfulness that the ARTicipate grant allowed me, but also that Lan Doyle, and again, their facilities manager at the time, who did a ton of problem solving with me and for me, it would not have existed without that support, at least not the way that I envisioned it. I would have found a way to see it through, but ARTicipate made it possible that it wasn't just me, which was the part I care about. I love putting stuff up on a wall and saying, like, look at the thing I made, but that's a closed loop. That's not super exciting to me. The idea of being able to put it up and then have people come and interact and engage and see this thing that they had really voted on and advocated for and suggested, and letting them come and interact, especially doing that like slightly taboo thing of like crayon on the walls. These pristine come and crayon on these walls with me. I loved that, and ARTicipate was really a huge part of making that possible. I think one of the things that the ARTicipate grant does is it puts some funding behind community engaged art, which is a term that I only really started to learn about and use through a lot of the programs at the Shenkman Art Center and through places like Arts Network and ARTicipate. And one of the things about being a community engaged artist is that you're sort of the catalyst for a project. You're maybe starting something, you're maybe laying out a framework, but you are not the ultimate decider. That the best projects don't really belong to me. They belong to everybody. So one of the things that I really loved about the Living Coloring Book Project and most of my projects was the idea that it starts with asking a question. It starts with engaging the public and saying, what do you care about? What matters? What's interesting? What's fun? What resonates for you? And then doing a little bit of the the mechanics of that, the drawing was almost the afterthought. I can do a line drawing of the building. That was probably the smallest. Well, physically it was the biggest, but logistically, in the soul of the project, that was the smallest part. I'm happy to draw the things that you think matter, and then again inviting people back in to say, okay, like, I've laid this out for us. If the drawing, if the line work, if whatever, if that's the thing that I can contribute, I need people to contribute the crayons. I need places like ARTicipate to contribute the funding. I need granting bodies like Awesome Ottawa to supplement that funding. I need the general public to come and be part of things like Fête Frisson. I need the community to come in and literally put color to the bare bones and the line work.
Mm-hmm.
Funding matters. Accessible funding matters. Accessible grants matter. ARTicipate is one of the more accessible grants. The governing bodies that it comes from are some of the more accessible governing bodies, and they're people that think about how to make that funding accessible. All of that stuff matters, and I think we're getting progressively better and better at being more direct with how we put that funding into the hands of artists. The time in my artistic career that I got the ARTicipate grant, I really needed that funding to make that project happen, and I needed the street cred of things like a fancy grant, because that led to more opportunities, and sometimes having that stamp of approval from people who vouch for you early on and believe in your more absurd projects are make or break for what doors will be open for you later on as an artist. And I'm a big believer in holding the door open after you have been invited to pass through it. And I think ARTicipate is really good at picking the people that do that. I mean, in a very real, kind of the most direct sense, part of the work that I get to do now is something called the Crayon Fund, which is a portion of the revenue that I make from my Twitch channel in my community is donated back to different community partners every 2 months. So I had the absolute privilege in 2022 of returning the favor and making a donation to the ARTicipate grant and saying that, I am a firm believer in fertilizing where you intend to harvest, and being able to contribute very directly back to one of the organizations that supported me early on in my career was, I think, a testament to ARTicipate doing a good job and picking people. So my career has grown in the sense that a lot of my work happens online. So I would still consider myself a community engaged artist, and the community is limited only by time zone and language barriers. So as long as English and the times that I'm online work for you, you are more than welcome to come in, which is a beautiful way to take community engaged art, in my opinion, to the next level, and also to be able to contribute some of the power and positivity of that larger community back into local granting bodies like ARTicipate and some of the other recipients of the Crayon Fund, because they were the ones who supported me early on, and I would like to hold that door open.